Hello everyone, welcome back to Speaking Spurs and me, Kieran, talking all things Tottenham, and we can rest easy for the rest of the weekend knowing that we've done our job. 2-0 victory over Nottingham Forest in the Premier League, away from home. It was a difficult game, they made us work for it. Obviously we're without a few more players now because of what went on, which we'll get into, but we know we'll finish the weekend 5th in the Premier League. And the good thing about that, we can't be caught, we can't be overtaken. Manchester United are currently on 27 points, so the best they can do is remain 3 points behind us. We've done our bit. So in this game, we saw Kulusevski set up Richarlison for his third goal in 2 games. He then took advantage of a Matt Turner error to power home our second, but the performance was marred a little bit in the fact that Bissouma was shown a straight red card for a challenge on Ryan Yates after a VAR check, and then Anthony Elanga had a goal ruled out for offside in this game as well. But look, I'm going to credit Nottingham Forest for things that they did in the game. They made it very hard, 3 at the back, low block. They still managed to create chances themselves. They kind of they kind of just sat back and broke when they could, but they have enough pace up there. I thought Elanga looked good. I also thought that Gibbs White had a bit of a torrid night. There was a lot of Spurs players that were making, I wouldn't say niggling fouls, but there was little moments off of the ball throughout the game really that were used to frustrate him. Thought he worked really hard, but didn't get anything from the game, luckily for us. So yeah, before we go into it, let's talk about the ridiculousness of Bissouma. So, as we keep saying, he has this habit of trying to take players on in areas that he doesn't have to. And I've definitely said this before, that he has this weird thing in him where he pushes the ball with his foot and he pushes it too far. And it puts himself in a position where he's then in a 50-50 race/challenge with the opposition. And, this time he came off on the worst side of it. It was a high challenge just below the knee fractionally, but the problem was he was out of control, and I can see the reason why he's gone in with his foot that high, because the ball was bouncing at the time, so he's tried to anticipate where the ball was going to be, but the Nottingham Forest player, I can't remember who it was, has got there first, and yeah, it is what it is. But what this means for us is Bissouma, because it's a straight red card. So the referee went over to the screen, changed his mind from the yellow to turn it to red for serious foul play. That means he misses 3 games, which actually takes him up to the point where he's going to join up with his international team. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Bissouma moving forward. And then on top of that, we lost Lo Celso in training this week. I don't know how long he's out for. I wonder if Ange will say anything in his press conference tonight about that. So that's 2 midfielders down. But yeah, it was ridiculous again from him. He's one of these players. I think because he gave it away so poorly, he feels that he needs to make up for it and makes a rash decision. Luckily, we managed to see out the rest of the game defensively. We did what we needed to do. Vicario, superb, got himself where he needed to do. But yeah, pretty good overall. So, just looking at a stat here, we have scored first in 11 consecutive Premier League games with 9 different players scoring the openers. Sonny has scored 3 of those. Van de Ven, an own goal from Ward, Kulusevski, Johnson, Lo Celso, Romero, Udogie, Richarlison, all sharing the spoils between them. So this is the great thing about us this season. We are not short of goal scorers or threats. But yeah, I have to say, Nottingham Forest, they largely matched us throughout the game tonight. They thought they'd equalised early in the second half, but Elanga's tap-in was correctly ruled out by VAR for offside. Now, when I was looking at this initially, I was thinking, is it poor defending that they managed to score that goal, or was it good defending because it was ruled out for offside? And actually, it was only marginally offside for Elanga, but I did think my first view of it was that it was offside anyway. And I actually think it's quite good defending, because there was actually 3 of them offside. And I know it looks risky because the tighter it is, it makes you question whether it was good defending or not. But actually, I thought the line was good. There was a moment in the second half where they had a free kick quite high up in their half, and we decided to hold a ridiculously high line. not far off the edge of the semicircle within our half. So it just goes to show that we're willing to take the risks. We're willing to back our players, despite the fact that Romero and Davies are not the quickest. We still were holding that high line, and at times, the way Nottingham Forest were playing, we continue to take risks. We continue to have just Romero and Davies back there up against two of their players. So, we obviously believe, but, we made our moments count in the game. Kulusevski played an excellent cross into Richarlison to nod home in between two players. It was a very nice header. And Kulusevski I thought, was excellent once again. He'll be disappointed that he had to go out wide, and that was only because of the injury to Brennan Johnson. Poor guy. After not long in the game, a clash of heads in the box, in our box defending, leaves him with a bloodied face. I don't know whether that keeps him out of the next game, but we were allowed to use that as a concussion sub. And then, interestingly, it was Oliver Skipp that got the nod to come on. I think a lot of us assumed it was going to be Højbjerg, who has had the nod so far in front of Skipp in pretty much every game. But Skipp was the one that came on, which meant Kulusevski had to come out of the central midfield area, put onto the right-hand side where he normally is, and it was a superb cross. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful, and that was, just before half-time. So Richarlison, he's very much a confidence player, emotional player. That'll mean a lot to him, but he rose well for that. He took it well. And I have to say, I was impressed with Richarlison's performance off the ball. He always runs. He's a willing runner constantly. And in this game, he was doing it once again. He was pressing from the front, chasing between players. And actually, they made it difficult for us because they had the three at the back. The way they were moving about defensively, they were solid. They would have seen West Ham do something a little bit similar in terms of the way that they had their defensive line against us, and they made it difficult. It meant Sonny was a bit ineffective throughout the game. He had the ball out wide. He didn't really have a lot of space to work in. They made it difficult for him to create the space. But yeah, we made our moment count in the second half as well. And I do have to credit Sonny for this. He chased down the goalkeeper, Matt Turner, and what that meant was he was forced into playing a certain angle. If he had have played it where he would have wanted to have played it, Sonny would have then made the block. That could have gone anywhere. It could have gone out for a corner. It could have deflected into the goal. So it forced him into a certain angle where it was either going to go straight out of play or into the waiting Kulusevski, as it did. He pounced, makes his way into the box. And normally when Kulusevski is in those positions, he always wants to cut back inside. So players naturally, I think, expect that as well when he's up against them. When he's in the middle, he's less predictable because he can go either way. But out wide, he has this habit of cutting inside to try and get on his favoured left foot. He didn't this time. Done a half step over, went to the right. And I think at that point, from the angle he was at, even the goalkeeper assumed that he was either going to shoot into the other corner or play it across the box. But what he did instead was just rifled it as hard as he could into the near side corner. Keeper got his hands to it, but the power and speed on it just meant it slipped off of his gloves into the back of the net. So, a bit of a mistake from the goalkeeper. I think he'll look back at it expecting that he should have saved it. But I think when you've done your homework and you look at the sort of player Kulusevski is, you probably expected him to cross it. I didn't expect him to shoot where he did. I didn't think he was going to go for his near post. I thought he was going to go for the far post or rifle the ball across the box with one of those low crosses that I say that Ange likes so much. But yeah, it's difficult for us now because we can't really afford any more players missing in the busy Christmas period. But as I said, Bissouma is now out for those games. The Studs Up Challenge, it was not great. But as I said, we remain fifth. We go level on points with Manchester City ahead of the remaining games this weekend. Forest still sit in 16th, 5 points above the drop zone. But all in all, it was a mature performance. I thought that Skippy, I think him getting the nod of coming on before Højbjerg might have instilled a bit of confidence in him. And also it meant he had a decent chunk of the game to do something. Whereas he's coming late in games, hasn't been able to get in the tempo and rhythm of it. And I thought he did a few things well. There was some good passes. There was a lovely moment where He made a tackle. It was late in the second half. Made a tackle and then started trying to run through players. Went down on the ball went down underneath him as he went to the floor. Managed to wriggle his way out of it and still play a progressive pass forward. And I think this was the key that we've been missing from Skippy, where his confidence hasn't been there. He hasn't been able to get involved in the games. He's come on so late. His passing hasn't quite been there, the rhythm, the tempo. But he came into this game, looked more confident. You're going to get in terms of work rate, you're going to get a 10 out of 10 from Skippy, but the quality isn't always there. And I think partly, his injuries have played a part. So he's had moments where he's been in the team, then had to come out of it. And then, players like Højbjerg are so experienced. Now we've got all these extra midfielders in. He doesn't quite fit in the position that he's been playing when he's been coming on late. Unfortunately for him, he's a deeper midfielder, and we've got a few of them. Bentancur, Bissouma, Sarr can do the box-to-box. Højbjerg is normally ahead of him in the pecking order. Yeah, I thought he was good. I thought Porro wasn't as good as he had been, but he came up against a different type of player today. They had more willing runners constantly. And that meant Porro couldn't get into the positions that he has been recently. He did get into the box for a header from a Sonny cross that I don't think he was quite expecting to get to. Just headed it wide, and he was really, really happy with Sonny's cross. Gave him the thumbs up. Super Vicario. I mean, where would we be without him? Made some important saves, especially that one with his feet in the second half, and that was a crucial moment. That could have changed the course of the game. It would have given them Nottingham Forest confidence in front of their own fans. I'm sure they'd have got right behind them. But the Kulusevski goal for me was the defining moment in the game, because had that not gone in the back of the net and then Bissouma gets sent off, I think it just changes the whole momentum of the game into Forest's hands. They'd have been right on us. And after the sending off, they did. They very much grew more and more into the game, dominated a lot of the possession, had better chances. They had plenty of corners. We gave away a lot of fouls for free kicks. So they had loads of opportunities to put the ball into the box. They just couldn't capitalise on it. So Vicario was massively important for us on the day. So what's up next for us? We've got Everton next. Luckily, we're at home with all these suspensions and injuries. That helps us a little bit. Everton are an informed team at the moment. Without the deduction that they got, the 10-point deduction, they would actually have been sitting in 10th. I don't know if that's where they would have been now. But yeah, from last weekend, I think they would have been 10th without that. So that just goes to show you the kind of season they're actually having under Sean Dyche. Those of you that watched the game or were at the stadium, you'd have seen that Sean Dyche was in the crowd, watching, taking note, having a look before they come up against us. That's a 3 p.m. kickoff. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I think the fact that we're at home will help us in this game. They've been picking up points, but I do expect us to win that one. Richarlison, I think, will keep his place through the middle. Obviously, it's a team that he knows very well because he played for them. He's also got the confidence of the last couple of games. He just looks like a very different player after coming back from the surgery that he had. I'm gutted for Brennan Johnson. I'm hoping that doesn't keep him out. I'm also gutted for Lo Celso because I feel like his form has been pretty decent. I think it was evident in the game. Our passing wasn't quite up to scratch as much as it has been recently. One thing I will say with defensive frailties possibly creeping in, we did see the return of Eric Dyer to the bench from his injury, so that is an option if we do need him coming up. But yeah, let's talk about the players themselves. Yeah, so Vicario in goal, made a good save from Elanga 18 minutes in, even though he was later flagged offside. Made a crucial reaction save in the 84th minute to deny Toffolo and managed to be in the right place, fortunately, when a late shot hit the post and it bounced off straight into him to safety. He made some important punches from set pieces as well. This is something I'm really impressed with Vicario. I think he's not just good of his feet, he's excellent at judging when to come out. He's very dominant of his box from set pieces, where I feel like Hugo Lloris started having those errors creeping into his game. Excellent servant, love Hugo, think he was one of the best goalkeepers we've ever had, especially over such a long period to sustain the high levels he did. But I feel like, from set pieces, it was creeping into his game where he was making more mistakes. But Vicario, the Venom man, I mean, I'm just loving him. Pedro Porro, oh, apart from that, I feel like part of the reason it was a difficult game for him wasn't just because that he was up against willing runners all game. It's the fact that he was getting chopped down every possibility. There was a lot of fouls in this game. And just before I move on to talking about Porro and the rest of the players, I felt the referee had a really poor game. Now, I'm not saying that because I'm bitter about the sending off. It was definitely a sending off. But I think he allowed too many challenges go in the game that should have been fouls. And I'm all for fluidity, but I think that really set the tone for the game. And Forest players were flying in, and the more they went flying in, it then started creeping into our game. Romero started getting a bit naughty as well. And I think ultimately that probably encouraged Bissouma to go in as much as he did on his challenge. But anyway, back to Porro, getting chopped down all the time, in the walls constantly, loads of strong challenges on him, but he still gave us an outlet down the right. So overall, still played quite well. Romero in the middle bailed out Sarr with an early booming challenge after the young midfielder gave the ball away to Yates on his way to goal. Definitely got away with a challenge that might have brought a fifth yellow card. Suspensions, we just can't afford it at the moment. Yeah, definitely got away with one. I thought a yellow card was coming, but he was important in keeping us in the game with a clean sheet. And I actually feel like Ben Davies helped Romero. He was talking to him after that challenge that he got away with, just probably giving him a reminder, look, just chill your beans a bit. We can do this. We don't need to be going in hard and fouling people. But yeah, now let's talk about Ben Davies. Frustratingly, there's lots of Spurs fans out there that still put him in the deadwood category and want him out of the club and feel like he's one of the problems because he's been around a long time during our period of not having success. However, every manager has rated him. Every manager has used him. He's had plenty of time on the bench, but he's always somebody that's relied on to come into games. He's now being trusted in the centre of defence, in a back two, and it was another excellent performance from him. Really mature in the centre of defence. He battled for everything. Headers, chesting the ball down. And one of the things that Ange was talking about in his pre-match conference was about the intelligence of Ben Davies and that he's a good listener. He takes on the information really well. And I think he knows he hasn't got the pace. He hasn't necessarily got the height or the leap. So he judges early. He helps push players into areas he wants, or he realises where the ball and player are likely to be going. So he reads the game really well with his intelligence. So he doesn't have to be the biggest guy. He commits to challenges. He's actually really good on the ball as well. And I've spoken about this, not so much this season, but I think maybe last season and the season before doing this channel, that he's actually quite good with the ball. And I'm hoping any of those Ben Davies haters out there now have finally been swayed to realise just how valuable he is playing out of position. As I've said many a time, great in a back three, centre backs. That's where his best position has always been for Wales. Chris Coleman speaks about it all the time. But in a two, not a chance. But he's adapting and he's doing really well and he's bailed us out several times. He deserves a lot of credit. Now, Destiny Udogie picked up his fifth booking of the season in the first half with a yellow for a shoulder barge. It was a difficult one because I was looking at it ultimately thinking I don't really see that as a yellow. It was a hard shoulder barge. I think it was a bit of a... It could have gone either way, but look, he'll now miss the game against Everton. Worked really hard though to try and make up for it. Got us up the pitch a few times, even when we were down to 10 men. It's one of those frustrating things because I don't know what happens now in terms of defence. Obviously, we have no Perisic, we have no Sessegnon. So does this mean we're likely to see Ben Davies go up to left back? Or are we going to see Emerson Royale, Pedro Porro out there? Not too sure. It just depends what Ange wants to do on the day. So put us in the buggery a little bit, especially with Bissouma being suspended as well. Players are dropping like flies. So now let's talk about Yves Bissouma. If I was to give a player rating for Bissouma, it would be a 2. Still not anywhere near his best. And yeah, as I said, picked up the red card for a ridiculous challenge. It was on Yates. So that's 3 separate suspensions that he's already had this season. Obviously, he accumulated 2 yellow cards in the game against Luton for the dive. So that left him out for a game. He then came back and picked up, because that didn't reset his yellow cards, sorry. It took them back to the 4 because it was turned to a red. So yeah, he was then out for that. And now another 3 games. Then he's off to the Africa Cup of Nations with Mali. Will not be back until February. So that is him done till February. Terrible discipline. Left his team in trouble yet again. Has this habit, as I said, with those silly movements inside. Knocking the ball too far. Has these moments of pure brilliance. He's great on the ball at times. Players struggled to knock him off. A bit like people used to struggle to knock off Dembele, but yeah, really let us down once again. He was shaking his head a lot as he went off. I don't think maybe he thought he deserved a red card, but when he watches it back, he'll be disappointed. Ange was not a happy man. I didn't even acknowledge him on the way off. Now, the player that started in the middle alongside them, Dejan Kulusevski, played Son in for an early chance with a clever reverse ball, and then had to move back onto the right. When Johnson went off, whipped in the wonderful cross for Richarlison to head home in added time at the end of the first half. Then he scored our second goal with that powerful effort that Turner could only push into his own net. He then battled away up front on his own superbly, because Sonny went off as well. So yeah, has to be man of the match for me. If he hadn't have got man of the match, it would have been Ben Davies. But I just think he's relishing football at the moment. I think he needs to keep that mask on. He's loving it. Brennan Johnson. Poor guy. Poor guy. Oh no, sorry, I haven't spoken about Pat Matassar. Played a couple of sloppy passes around his own box in the opening 20 minutes, which gave us some problems. He was involved in the first goal. His energy really helped out when we had the 10 men late in the game, but it wasn't one of his best games, let's put it that way. Yes, Brennan Johnson, back at his former club, prodded a shot that Turner pushed around his post, and then obviously left the field soon after, following a big whack to the head in our box. Both players calling the physios over frantically. They knew it was a bad one. There was blood. He got a massive round of applause, not just from the Spurs fans, but from the Nottingham Forest fans as well. He was so good for them. And I just feel sorry for him that he couldn't see out the game and get the reception for his playing ability. And unfortunately, it was because of the way he went off. Sonny, out on the left, denied by Turner in the opening minutes. Worked hard, but got very little of the ball down the left. As I say, they defended well, I thought. They made it difficult for us to create chances. So it was one of those, I don't think we could have really scored more goals if we'd have tried. They just weren't letting us in. They made it very difficult. But we have to talk about the man in the middle, Richarlison. 3 goals in 2 games. Terrific header from Kulusevski's cross at the end of the first half. Didn't see much of the ball as the game wore on. That wasn't really his fault. That was just down to the way that Forest were playing and the fact that we didn't have any of our pass masters. Celso obviously out injured. James Maddison injured. And then Kulusevski having to move out wide. So it actually kind of cut the supply chain, because the midfielders that came on throughout the game, Oliver Skipp, Højbjerg, they're very much deeper players, so the distance between them and Richarlison is great. And then, yeah, he obviously went off as well in the game. So let's talk about the subs that did come on. Oliver Skipp fought away, and as the game wore on, he did his part to keep Forest at bay. Had one late lung busting run when he tried to find Sarr, but couldn't get the ball to him. But ultimately, better than he has been recently. It'll be interesting to see if he starts the game against Everton, or is Højbjerg going to get the nod. So moving on to Højbjerg, brought some experience to the midfield after Bissouma's exit. You know, Ange was forced into certain changes, and I know that he likes us to go for it, but I think maybe he learnt from against Chelsea, although it was very entertaining that we went for it with 9 men in that game, that ultimately we needed to hang on to this one because of, you know, the amount of players that we're going to be losing soon. We couldn't afford to be conceding goals, and you could see that with his substitutions. They were more defensive than attacking, mainly because we had more defensive experienced players on the bench than attacking. We obviously had Jamie Donnelly, Valise, Brian Hill, people like that. but he didn't do that this time. He brought the experienced heads on. So the next one to be entered into the frame was Emerson Royale. Came on late in the game to add to our defensive body and structure, and he actually took a whack only minutes after coming on. Out on the right, he played the ball. Forest player comes in late on him, and as I say, it was just the tone of the game from the referee. He just allowed these things to happen. It got the players hyped up, and then the other player to enter the field was Alejo Veliz. He basically came on to waste some seconds, and then the whistle was blown. So yeah, that was what I have to say about the players from today. But yeah, the takeaways from that is maybe playing inside has helped Kulusevski, because then when he gets back on the wing, because when he's been in the middle, he's able to move left and right, able to do things on his right foot. So I think if he's in the middle of a game and then has to go back out onto the wing, he's used to that movement. So when he goes out there, he's more likely to take a player on the other side and use his right foot rather than cutting him on the left. And I hope that gives him the confidence to do it even more, because the probability is that he's going to have to be used out on the right in the coming games. It depends what happens to Brennan Johnson. If they manage to take a look at his head, glue it up, stitch it, whatever, and he comes back for the next game, Kulusevski then has the possibility to move there. But ultimately, we need to get some of these wide players minutes. I think part of the reason why we will see Richarlison stay in the middle isn't just because of his form at the moment. I think the fact that Sonny is going to the Asian Cup, it just makes sense, because Richarlison's going to have to play through the middle. Unless we sign a striker early in January, Richarlison will be playing through the middle, and then you bring in, I suppose, your Brian Hills and players like that, and unless we sign a winger. So yeah, as I speak now, I haven't got an update on what Anne just said, but once I've had a look at what Anne just said, I will do another video to talk about that. So thanks for sticking around. Hope you enjoyed that one. As I say, next up, massive game against Everton, a sort of informed team. Hopefully Richarlison can do it against his former club, keep his confidence going. But I have been Kieran from Speaking Spurs. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment. And until next time, come on you Spurs.